Hello everybody, I am Charlie from Dr. Wen, and welcome along to a brand new daily Doctor Who YouTube video. As promised, I am back, and today I'm going to do Chapter 3 of Count Your Shadows, the third chapter in the first story of a 12-story long, almost year-long fan series of Doctor Who stories that I will be writing and reading on my YouTube channel. So I've previously done chapters 1 and 2 of Count Your Shadows, both with pretty good cliffhangers at the end, and today's Count Your Shadows will resolve the cliffhanger of Barbara having a second shadow, meaning that she is about to be eaten by a swarm of Vashta Nerada. So quite a scary cliffhanger, and this is probably going to be the scariest chapter in all of Count Your Shadows. So this is where, it's most horrifying and intense. So I actually really enjoyed writing this and reading this. Well, I will currently. So I hope you enjoy this, everybody, and hope you look forward to it. Let's get into this video. So, here is Count Your Shadows, Chapter 3. Barbara, the Doctor questioned, quietly, his voice shaking slightly. Do you see your shadow? The one that the torch is casting? Of course, Doctor. It's right in front of me. Surely you should know that I have a shadow. Do you see your second one? What do you mean, Doctor? Barbara asked, nervously. She glanced over to her left. Sure enough, there was one long, looming shadow, as black as midnight. Doctor, what's going on? There isn't a second source of light in here, so why does she have a second shadow? Ian shouted, his voice cracking with fear slightly. I'm so sorry, Barbara, the Doctor muttered. I am so incredibly sorry. But you're about to be eaten down to your skeleton by some Vashta Nerada. A slight tear appeared in the corner of his eye, something which Ian had never seen before. Ian couldn't speak. He couldn't even move. He was frozen to the floor of one corridor in the TARDIS, staring at Barbara, who was going to die in front of his eyes in seconds. He had always known that travelling with the Doctor was dangerous at times, but he had never considered that Barbara would die. He had spent the last day thinking he would die on numerous occasions, and now here he was, about to witness the death of the closest person to him. What are they? Ian asked the Doctor, his voice livid with anger. And how do we kill them? How do we kill the Vashta Nerada? Ian's tone grew louder and angrier with every word. I'm sorry, Ian, Barbara whispered, a tear trickling from her eye. Barbara fell to the cold metal floor of the TARDIS. Ian spotted Barbara's leg. Slowly, an invisible force was eating away at her legs, leaving only bone. The Vashta Nerada were so fast, they completed her legs within seconds. Blood oozed from her body, her face as cold as ice and greyer than a stone. Ian held her as her lifeless form began to melt in his hands. After another few seconds, Barbara was just ahead, then a face, and then a cold skeleton on the TARDIS's floor. Ian felt like he couldn't breathe. The person closest to him had just melted away in his own hands. She was gone, a cold, lifeless skeleton on the ground. Then a thought occurred to him. The TARDIS had tricked Ian and Doctor earlier that day, made them think they were falling through the Sahara Desert and the Ood Sphere, made the Doctor think he was looking for Ian for a week, when to Ian it was mere seconds. What if the TARDIS had faked Barbara's death? Ian was desperate, clinging to any possibility that Barbara could be alive. Doctor, Ian whispered to the man standing next to him, his head in his hands, is there a possibility that Barbara is still alive? That the TARDIS tricked us again? The Doctor lifted his head up, his face looking solemn and grief-stricken. I'm afraid not, Ian, the Doctor spoke, in a depressing low voice, so unlike his usual cheery demeanour. Barbara is gone, completely dead. While we were walking, I had figured out that the creature that infected the TARDIS was none other than the Vashta Nerada. They feed off darkness and eat human flesh. There was a whole swarm of them, to be precise. They teleported Barbara to the engine room of the TARDIS, messed with our perceptions of space and time, tricked us, possessed Barbara, and just killed her. They infected the TARDIS, Ian, and they are unstoppable. Doctor, you have just told me that the person closest to me has just died, and that whatever killed her can't be stopped, Ian shouted, rage boiling in his eyes, as his face grew redder. It's going to kill us as well, possibly in the next few minutes. So why are you so calm? The Doctor looked into the distance, down the seemingly endless corridor. Tears were still in his eyes, but he had regained that cheerful spark in them. Because, Ian, the Doctor spoke, his normal voice returning, I have a plan. First, we're going to find that swarm of Vashta Nerada, and we're going to catch them. I remember a time when I thought the Daleks were unstoppable, but they aren't. We have stopped them twice. So neither are the Vashta Nerada. We're going to find out who sent them here, cast them out into the far reaches of space. Ian couldn't believe what the Doctor was saying to him. Unfortunately, he had witnessed many deaths during his time travelling with him, Barbara and Susan. Every time, the Doctor had been incredibly sad, even attended their funerals. Lots of the time, the alien even found a way to bring them back to life. But now the person closest to him and the Doctor just died in Ian's arms. He hardly cared. "Doctor!" Ian shouted, extremely angry at the Doctor's attitude towards the whole situation. "Barbara is dead. She was just eaten by a swarm of Vashta Nerada. She is now a pile of bones on the floor of your TARDIS, and you don't even care. You just want to find the Vashta Nerada. You never cared about Barbara at all, did you?" The Doctor carried on walking, in his usual manner, strolling down the corridor as if nothing had happened. His cane twirled in his left hand, and there was even a slight spring in his step. What's wrong with him? Ian thought to himself. Something isn't right. He always cared about Barbara, always protected her and looked after her. Then a thought came to Ian. When the Vashta Nerada had eaten Barbara, where did they go? They had the ability to possess, didn't they? Ian's stomach flipped inside of him. It couldn't be. Cautiously, Ian strode over to the Doctor. When he finally reached him, he tapped the Doctor's shoulder, which was turned away from him. He turned around, but he looked different. Much, much different. His skin was as white as chalk, and his eyes obsidian black. His wooden cane was now long and slender, just as black as his eyes. On top was a figure made of platinum, looked like a man holding a sword. What it was? Ian didn't particularly know. Ian stepped back in horror. What had happened to him? He looked the same way Barbara did when she was possessed, but the Doctor was different. He emanated evil and reeked of power. He was taller now too, at least 7 feet, if not more. This was not the Doctor. This was someone else, someone purely made of cruelty and evil. Suddenly, the figure began to speak. "The Minister of War is coming for the Doctor. He will show no mercy." His voice was low and menacing, even more so than Barbara's. Without a second thought, Ian began to sprint back down the corridor. He didn't care where he was going, or how long it would be until he escaped, but he needed to get away from this being. Instantaneously, the wall next to him exploded, showering him with ash and rubble. He continued running, his eyes watering and filled with dust. Ian turned his head to the left, and looked back at whatever the Doctor had turned into. What he saw was too horrifying for Ian to even comprehend. The creature still wore the Doctor's clothes, but it had ripped them beyond compare. It was now at least 20 feet tall, and had had to army crawl down the corridor to try and reach him. His spine was arched and stuck out even more, and his eyes were still midnight black. In the time it took Ian to notice his horrific appearance, he now realised that the creature was gaining on him. In a moment of desperation, Ian ran straight into the nearest room, and slammed a metal door behind him with a thud. What he saw inside was even more disturbing than the creature itself. The first thing Ian noticed was the door of the room. It was silver and dotted with dark grey hemispheres. Dalekanium. The Doctor would never kill, so why was the door made from a Dalek? The second thing Ian noticed was the inside of the room itself. It had a high ceiling and was extremely wide. The ground itself was littered with parts of aliens, the severed head of a Sontaran general, dried blood still on the ground, the arm of a weeping angel, the inside of a Dalek itself, its yellow eye cold and distant. But then Ian noticed something else, something even more peculiar. "What?" Ian questioned, surprisingly calm. "Why are you here?" At the end of the room stood a girl. She looked maybe 15 or 16 years old, and had dark almond-coloured eyes. Her hair was black and close-cropped, and she looked rather tall for her age. "Hello," the girl said. "Could you please tell me who you are? And where am I? Where is my grandfather? He is called the Doctor. Do you know him?" To be continued. So that was a pretty awesome cliffhanger, if I do say so myself. I really hope you're looking forward to Chapter 4 of Count Your Shadows, and feel free also in the comments to let me know which has been your favourite chapter out of these 3 so far, so I kind of know which writing style to do. I've tried 3 different sort of genres and types of writing for all of them, if you might have noticed. I focused on plot and setting and description in the first chapter. In the second chapter I focused more on characters, and in the third chapter I focused more on the dark, intense, and quite mysterious aspects of the adventures they have. So feel free to let me know which kind of aspect you prefer. I am only currently writing the second story, so there is still plenty of time for me to improve. So I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. Also feel free to just let me know what you thought of this chapter in the comments, and maybe tell me what you think will happen in Chapter 4. So, next time. Tomorrow, then, I thought, since I did a Genesis of the Daleks video earlier today, I thought I would rank all 6 Genesis of the Daleks episodes. I will see you then, and goodbye.